Welcome back to the Whiskey Noobs podcast, my friends. We've got another fun episode today. We're kind of sticking with this vibe that summer's coming up. I know we talked about summer in the last episode, and it's a whole month later. But right now, as of the recording of this, it's late May. This will be released in mid-June. It's a good time to talk about summer, really. So, that's what we're talking about. And specifically, we're talking about whiskey cocktails. Cocktails that involve whiskey, and I'm also going to include mixed drinks, things like that, because yes, against popular belief, I do drink cocktails sometimes. And honestly, in the summertime, cocktails are the best. Like, in the summertime, just neat whiskey is good. It's always good. I mean, it's like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's good, right? It's pretty good, but I like a cocktail if I'm going to be sitting out in the sunlight, if I'm going to be by a pool. I like a cocktail, you know? So these are going to be ones that involve whiskey, because there's a lot of cocktails that I enjoy that don't involve whiskey. I love a mojito sitting next to the pool. I love a blue Hawaiian on occasion. Yes, I do drink girly drinks sometimes as well. Sometimes I'll have a daiquiri or a pina colada. Sue me. They're delicious. So, regardless, if you want to stick to the whiskey theme, or if you just haven't had a lot, there's not like a lot of great whiskey cocktails out there. So if you're like trying to find some, this is going to be the episode for you. We're going to talk about different whiskey cocktails, ranging from like really weak ones that are basically like a mixed drink. I'm not going to talk about Jack and Coke, but something, you know, that strength, all the way to like a straight up cocktail, like a whiskey sour, where it's really strong and you still got to pace yourself. But if you shake it with enough ice, maybe you can drink it on a hot day. We're going to cover that whole range because obviously there's a mix of people who are looking for a mix of different things. This isn't limited to summertime. I drink these all year round. Some of them more so for summertime. But I think this is a convenient time to talk about it, because I think it's the time that a lot of us are probably going to put the Glencairns away at least a little more often, and we're going to bust out the cocktail shakers. Let's talk about it. But before we get to that, I got to talk about the Patreon page. Please, if you haven't already, take a look at the link in the show notes and just check out the Patreon. All I'm asking is that you take a look. That is the absolute best way to support this podcast. That Patreon page is the driving force behind this show right now. It is the financial return that I need in order to improve and increase production. The plan here, over the course of the next couple months, hopefully you're going to start seeing it. It's still a couple months away, but we're really hoping to ramp up production, increase what we're doing. That's probably going to be more towards the end of the summer, but if we get there, it's absolutely because of the Patreon page. It has carried us this far, and it is, I can't thank my patrons enough. So that's enough of my soapbox. That's all that I'm going to talk about today, but that's where we're at with the Patreon page. 2 months from now, the show is either going away or going to increase tenfold. Right now, the plan is increase tenfold, but I really need the support of the Patreon page. That's one of the huge things. Okay, now I'm actually off my soapbox. Sorry, I said that and then I didn't. But we're back. We're back to the show. I wanted to make a point towards the beginning of this show to also mention briefly the Solo Blind, not to ask you to go buy it, although I think you should, justneat.shop, but actually to give you guys a couple of updates, because we've got lots of people asking about inventory, asking about why we're selling out so fast, telling us that we should do this or should do that in order to not sell out so quick. So I wanted to explain it a little bit. If you don't know, the Solo Blind is an invention of my own making along with my business partner Saul, and we created this apparatus where you can do blind tastings by yourself. That's all I'm going to say about it, because I feel like if you haven't seen it, it's in previous episodes, or you can look it up online, and I don't want to bore people who know more about it, who already know about it. So the problem that we're having is it sells out relatively quickly. We release roughly once a month right now. We've been sticking to the once a month schedule for a while now, and it sells out pretty quickly, and some people get very frustrated by that. So I've had a couple people message and be like, stop putting them in stock if you're only going to sell a handful of them. I promise you, we're not just selling a handful of them. So thing number one I want to point out is we are selling a lot of them. We're actually spending an entire day every month just packing boxes. We meet up once a month and we just pack boxes, and it takes a very long time. And I'm not saying like, woe is me for having to do that. I totally chose that, but I'm saying to understand like the volume of what we're doing. one of the things with mentioning, like, I'm trying to expand this summer, and I told you I'm trying to increase production, one of the things I'd really like to increase also is the solo blinds, and I should be able to do more with the solo blind. So that is another thing where the Patreon kind of contributes to that in a way, because this whole thing is going that direction is what I'm trying to say. The other thing that I wanted to point out is we're running not just one 3D printer. We're running lots of 3D printers 24/7, which requires a lot of maintenance. It requires somebody to take the parts off the printers. My point being, yes, we are a very, very small business, but we are also doing a lot. So when people, the biggest complaint we tend to get is you're only probably releasing a handful of these, and you're telling us that you're, releasing a large quantity of stock. We don't talk about exactly how much we release, but I promise you it's quite a lot. It's as much as we're physically capable of doing with our current 9-to-5s. Most importantly, like it is the maximum amount we could do. Even if we invested more money right now, it wouldn't get us where we need to go. But the good news, we are expanding. So we need more manpower. We need more time dedicated to this. We're working on those types of solutions as well. So just please be patient with us. If you've been trying to get a solo blind and you've failed the last few times, I understand the frustration. I have been that guy online or in line at a liquor store. I have been that guy who's like, I've been trying for months and I can't get it. I still, as a podcaster, influencer, content creator, whatever you want to call it, I still don't own a bottle of Stag Junior. I've still never tasted most of the BTAC collection. Trust me when I say I understand your frustrations. So we're working on it. That's the big thing that I wanted to get across. We are going full steam ahead. We are releasing as much as we possibly can, and it should only get more and more and more with every release moving forward. We're working on expansion. So I just wanted to say that. Please be patient, and I'm not asking for pity. I'm not asking for woe is me. We're working on it. That's what I'm trying to get across. Okay, now let's talk about whiskey cocktails. Once again, I'm going to include everything. I'm not just going to include strong ones, so you don't need to be in the comments like, oh, that's not a cocktail, that's a mixed drink. I don't know. Whatever. These are different combinations of ingredients that go with whiskey that I think work great in the summertime. I think they work great in general. And so, yeah, that it is what it is. So I'm starting with one. This was actually the last one that I thought to add to this, and it might be my favorite in the summertime. I put that a different one is my favorite in the summertime, and then I thought of this one, and I'm like, maybe this one's my favorite in the summertime. Honestly, it might be. But we're saving the best, quote unquote, the one that I thought was my favorite for last. We're putting this one first. So you get a great one out of the gate that might be my favorite, and then you get the other one that I thought was my favorite at the end. I don't know which is my favorite. I'll have to try both side by side. Bourbon Orange Crush. Maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't. There is a recipe online that's a little different from what I do, and I can't believe it. When I was looking it up, I found the original recipe that kicked me off on drinking these, and it was from TikTok. It was from a guy called Malcolm Reed on TikTok. That's his name. That's not his @ but I think if you search that name, he's going to come up, especially if you put Bourbon Orange Crush. And I saw this video like a couple years ago and sent it to my dad, and I was like, well, we got to try these. And then we bought the ingredients and tried them. So all it is very simple. 1 shot of bourbon, half a shot of orange liqueur. In the video, he used Grand Marnier. You can use triple sec if you want. You can also use like a Cointreau, something that I like the sweeter orange liqueurs. And then he adds a little bit of orange juice. I would say about from wherever the level is on a normal size glass, like a pint glass. He fills it halfway towards the top with the orange juice and then tops it with orange Sprite. Just gives it a light stir. So obviously this is kind of a weaker cocktail, but it's nice. And in the summertime, you kind of want a weaker cocktail. Also, his @ on TikTok is how to BBQ right, like how to barbecue right. So that if you want to go look him up and check out that video, I got to give him full credit. He's the first person that I saw make it, and so I'm giving him the credit for it. Maybe it came from somewhere else. I don't know. So my experience with that cocktail, let's put it this way. It's a weak bourbon cocktail, but you can still taste the bourbon. And in the summertime, I absolutely love it. Because like the orange tastes almost like orange candy. But if you put it with like a bourbon, like something pretty oaky. My go-to for in a cocktail, something oaky, is always Cooper's Craft Barrel Reserve. You put it with something like that, The bourbon still comes through strong and nicely, especially try to get something like 100 proof, or even a little bit higher proof since you're mixing it with so much stuff. And it's like you taste the bourbon, but you don't taste the alcohol is almost the mixture that you get. And if you top it with a Sprite or a 7-Up, like a lemon lime soda, there's a little something else, right? Because it's like lemon lime soda. So there's a little something else, and it's not super carbonated, but there's a little carbonation in it. It's just like, I don't know. It's just like this real happy medium of summertime drinks, which is why it's like one of my favorites. So yeah, that one, the Bourbon Orange Crush, do not knock it until you try it. It might not be the strongest cocktail in the world, but especially on a hot day, if you're just having something by the pool, that is one of, if not my favorites. The next one that I've got is a Bourbon Smash. Now, the original recipe for a Bourbon Smash is kind of just a mint julep plus a whiskey sour, but you can make some modifications to it to make it a little bit more summery. But let's start with the actual recipe. So if you go to tommacy.com, I'm just giving credit where credit is due. You can probably find it actually, I know you can find it all over the internet, but that's where I got this recipe. So you take 2 ounces of bourbon, 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup, although you might need more or less depending on how big the lemon is, also depending on how sweet you want it. You take 8 to 10 mint leaves, and then you take half of a lemon, which you cut into quarters. So you take your simple syrup, your mint leaves, and your lemon, and you muddle them in the bottom of a cocktail shaker till those lemons are like real juiced. Then you add your bourbon, you shake the heck out of it with some ice, and then you strain it. You can garnish with a lemon slice if you want. You can garnish with a couple extra mint sprigs if you want. And so you get the lemon, you get the mint. It's a really nice springy mixture. I've had just this before, which in and of itself is very nice, got a very nice springtime vibe to it. It's also a little bit, you can tell by the recipe, it's a little bit strong/sour, right? This is very close to a mint julep mixed with a whiskey sour, both of which are strong cocktails. So you can shake it more with ice if you want it watered down a little bit more. Or another thing that you can do that makes it sweeter and it also kind of waters it down is you can muddle with it some berries. Or you can muddle in the glass that you're about to pour it into some berries. A very common one you'll see online is a blackberry bourbon smash. So yeah, blackberry bourbon smash. That's a very common one you'll see online. You could do strawberries if you wanted to. I think I've even seen where you take peach without the skin on it, like you peel it, you get a little slice of it, and you muddle that. I think I've even seen that. The big point being you can add some fruit to this. And that fruit is not only going to add some sweetness, it's going to add some different flavor to it. It's also going to water it down a little bit, especially if you use a bunch of blackberries. And that's going to help make it, in my opinion, a little bit more approachable on a hot day. And also, the lemon whiskey mint combo of just the original cocktail is a good blank slate, in my opinion, to add a little bit more flavor. Because lemon and mint are both kind of like light flavors. I mean, lemons are obviously very sour. But if you think of like a lemon muffin, it's like it's a light flavor. So if you think of a lemon blueberry muffin, you got like a really nice combo there. So for that reason, I think this cocktail works really well if you add some blackberries or blueberries or whatever it is to the cocktail. And it's also going to water it down a little bit, which is going to make it way more approachable on those hot days in the summertime. So like I said, I have had that one. I don't know if I've had it where I've muddled berries into it. I think I made a different similar cocktail that I muddled berries into, which I don't know the name of off the top of my head. But I have had it without the berries, and I enjoyed it. And then when I saw it with a fruit muddled into it, I was like, that's probably phenomenal. I wish I would have had the time I would have made that for today, but I didn't have any mint leaves on hand. So I'm going to be trying that one early this summer, I can tell you that much. And my experience with it without the berries is still good. So even if you're like, I still want something a little bit drier, I still don't want all that sweetness, I don't want all those berries or berry seeds, whatever it is, then you could always do it without the berries. And if you're worried about berry seeds, by the way, you could muddle the berries in the strainer with everything else, shake it up, and then strain it or even double strain it, and you'll get all those seeds out, but you'll still get the berry juice in there. So keep that in mind as another kind of trick you can do. If you don't know what double straining is, it's you put everything in the shaker, you shake it up, and you got all the stuff that you don't want going into your cocktail, right? This should probably be double strained anyways because of the mint leaves. you got all this stuff you don't want going into your cocktail. You just want the liquid in there. So on top of your cocktail, you got one of those little strainers. It's like the little thing that you set on top of a cocktail shaker when you go to pour it out. Double straining, you take an actual like wire strainer like you'd have in your kitchen or like you'd use to sift flour. I've used them to sift flour before. One of those little guys. You put it over the glass that you're pouring it into, and then you have the strainer on top of the cocktail shaker, and you pour it through the other strainer, the wire mesh, and that gets like all the fine particulates out of it. Sorry, I got a phone call. Very unprofessional of me. I shouldn't have my phone out on the table. Okay. Anyhow, so yeah, that's what double straining is, and you'll probably want to do it with this cocktail because you're going to have mint leaves muddled down into it. You're going to have berries if you put berries with seeds in it, or you can muddle the berries directly in the glass, double strain everything else over the berries, and then you get those full chunks of berry in there if that's more what you're going for. Berry, I say berries, but you could also do this with like peaches, something that's going to muddle down nicely. Maybe you could do it with plum, but I don't know. That wouldn't be super summery, but you could try it. I mean, if you want to try it, follow your dreams. That's what I'm trying to say with this episode. Okay, the next one we've got is what I pathetically tried to make for this podcast, and that is a Gold Rush. So a Gold Rush is way more towards the dry and sour end of the scale in terms of cocktails. It's basically a whiskey sour made with honey instead of simple syrup. And I also don't put any egg white in my Gold Rushes. To be honest with you, I usually don't put them in my whiskey sours either. But all it is, it's real simple. You take 2 ounces of bourbon, 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, and 3/4 of an ounce of honey syrup, and you mix them. And even if you don't know what honey syrup is, which I'm about to describe, you can probably tell from that recipe, you've got more bourbon than you have other stuff. So this is a strong cocktail, more in the realm of an old-fashioned or whiskey sour. Honey syrup is very easy. All it is, it's 1-to-1 honey with water. The same way you'd make simple syrup, you make honey syrup, except instead of white sugar, you use honey. Heat up half a cup of water, add in half a cup of honey. You can do it on smaller scales as well. Just keep it 1-to-1. Mix it up real good, you've got honey syrup. It's just kind of like watering down the honey a little bit and makes it mix into cocktails much easier. So add all of that to a shaker, add ice, and in my opinion, shake the crap out of it because it is a strong cocktail. Shaking the crap out of it with ice is going to help water it down a little bit, and it's also going to help make it really, really cold, which is great for a summer day, right? Then you're going to strain that out over a big rock so that the big rock, the big chunk of ice that's in your glass doesn't melt as fast. Strain it out so that you don't get those little chunks of ice that are in the shaker into the glass, and that's going to be a strong cocktail. Now, as I mentioned, you can shake it with more ice and shake it longer to water it down a little bit. You can also add a little bit more honey syrup if you want a little bit more sweetness. You kind of want to play with it. This is one that I like because you can really play with it, because if you're in the mood for a dry cocktail, you can do exactly this recipe that I just mentioned. If you're in the mood for a sweeter cocktail, you can add a little bit more honey syrup. You can also add a little bit more lemon juice and a touch of water, because lemon juice plus water plus sugar, who knows what that makes? That makes lemonade. So you're just kind of making it more towards a spiked lemonade. So you can really tweak it in the summertime to make it more so what you want it to be. The reason that mine is so pathetic that I made for this podcast, I made it up because I was like, I'll drink a Gold Rush during this podcast. I wish I would have went with a Bourbon Crush instead, or with a Bourbon Smash even. I made this to have during the show, and then I took a sip of it when I got down here, because I was like, I got to get down there right away because the ice is going to melt. Not only did the ice melt and water it down more than it should have, but something doesn't taste right, and I'm 99.9% sure it's because I did not use fresh squeezed lemon juice, which is, fine. I do that sometimes when I'm in a pinch, but the lemon juice in my fridge is probably nearing the end of its life. So I'm not going to drink this. I have it sitting here just for show, and I'm going to throw away my lemon juice when I go upstairs right now after this podcast. So lesson learned there. I forgot to mention this with the Bourbon Smash, you have to have lemons because you muddle the lemons instead of juicing them. But also with this, and definitely with the Bourbon Orange Crush, which is with oranges, Gold Rush is with lemons. In both cases, freshly squeezed is going to taste the best. I get yelled at online all the time because I don't use freshly squeezed sometimes. People in the comments are like, it's not going to taste the same. It doesn't. I will validate those people by saying it does not taste the same. I'll use pre-squeezed like lemon juice, just store-bought lemon juice, because I'm in a rush and because I usually don't have lemons laying around. But especially if you're planning a pool day, if you know you're going to be making it soon, having oranges or lemons on hand, depending on which cocktail you're trying to make, and freshly squeezing them is going to be a lot. It really, really, really makes a difference. It's surprising to me how much of a difference it makes, but it really does. So freshly squeezed is always going to be the best. We got 2 more left. One more and then what I think is my favorite, but the Bourbon Orange Crush it's gunning for it. So the next one is very sweet, very short and sweet and to the point, but not actually very sweet to the taste. So that was a poor choice of words. An old fashioned. You can make old fashions a little bit more summery. So an old fashioned typically is going to be whiskey, bitters of some sort, a sweetener of some sort, and then usually a garnish. I usually assemble my old fashions in the glass that I'm going to drink them out of because I'm lazy. You can also assemble them in a different glass, stir them up good, and then strain them into a glass is like the proper way to do it. Straining them over one big rock. But you can make these summery by changing what you put in them. So like an obvious example of a summery type old fashioned would be you can use orange bitters instead of normal bitters. I would just use simple syrup in this case because it's going to make a nice canvas for what I'm about to say. And that is you can add an orange garnish with the orange bitters and then use a lighter bourbon, something not super oaky. Just because it's at top of mind because I just saw it outside. Brothers Bond would be a great example of this. TX is not technically a bourbon, but it'd be a great example of this. What else was on my shelf? It's a good example. I think 1792 is a very light. It's bourbon-y, but it's not like overbearing. You can do something like that with orange bitters and an orange garnish, and that's going to really lighten it up and make it sweeter. That being said, this cocktail is still mostly bourbon, so it's still going to be really, really strong, so you still have to be very, very careful drinking it in the sunlight. Make sure you're staying hydrated. With any of these, because I keep talking about drinking them poolside, drinking them in the summer, please, please, please stay hydrated with all of these. Just drink water in between drinks. Drink lots of water, etc. So you can spruce up old fashions. Another bitters that I use that gives me more summertime vibes is I always pronounce this wrong. I think it's sorghum. It's sassafras and sorghum bitters that I have from Woodford Reserve. Those are a little bit more in the spicy, almost fall vibe, but they're brighter. They have a little bit more of a almost like herbal, lemony type kick to them that I think works in the summertime as well if you pair it with the right bourbon. Off the top of my head, I think I did one that was a sassafras and sorghum bitters. Simple syrup once again. It was a middle-of-the-road bourbon. I'm going to say like Evan Williams Bottled and Bond, just as a guess. Middle-of-the-road, somewhat bourbon-y, but not overbearing, not super oaky bourbon. And then garnish, weirdly, with a lemon peel. Sometimes throwing that lemon peel in there lightens it up and makes it taste a lot more summery. You can garnish an old-fashioned with a lemon peel. You can even do one thing that I don't like to talk about because it's a heated topic on the internet. You can also muddle fruit at the bottom of your old fashioned. Now, a lot of people are going to tell you that's not a real old fashioned. I would argue you could consider the fruit a sweetener. And so then, technically, if we're being really technical, an old fashioned is supposed to be made over a sugar cube. You're supposed to put the bitters on the sugar cube and muddle that all down. Most quote unquote old fashions that we make these days are like a spin on an old fashioned. So if you want to add some real extra spin that some people say is just straight up heresy, you can muddle fruit at the bottom of the old fashioned and then do everything else that I just talked about. And then you're going to get a little bit more fruit juice. It's going to lighten it up. It's going to make it a little bit more approachable for summertime. So there are even people in one state that I forget. It's either Wisconsin or Minnesota. I think it's Wisconsin. They add lemon lime like Sprite or 7-Up to their old fashions. You didn't hear it from me, all right? That's wild. I actually have never tried that. I should try it. And sometimes they'll add club soda as well. They'll add like carbonation to the old fashioned. At that point, I think we are getting into a different cocktail in my personal opinion. But that doesn't mean it's not good for summertime. So you can absolutely try that as well. Now we're on to my favorite in the summertime, or at least previously my favorite. Might be tied with the Bourbon Orange Crush that we talked about in the beginning. But I love, love, love in the summertime a Lynchburg lemonade. If you haven't heard of it, it's specifically a Jack Daniels thing. That's why it's called a Lynchburg lemonade, because they're from Lynchburg, Tennessee. And so you usually use Jack Daniels to make it. This comes directly from the Jack Daniels website. You can also buy pre-made Lynchburg lemonades Jack Daniels sells in cans and in bottles, which are phenomenal. They're fantastic, but you can also make it at home. So straight from the Jack Daniels website, 1 ounce of Jack Daniels, the standard old number 7 Jack Daniels, 1 ounce of triple sec, 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, just 1/4 of an ounce of simple syrup to add a little bit of sweetness, and then 4 ounces of lemon lime soda. I didn't screenshot the actual instructions, but what I personally would do is shake all of that together except the lemon lime soda and then top with the lemon lime soda. Actually, I think on the website they say to just build it in the glass and stir it. That might be the case. So you could just put all those in a glass, stir them up with some ice. It's delicious. It's so simple, and it's probably like the least whiskey-y on here because it's just so little whiskey with all these other ingredients. But it's really, really good. Lynchburg lemonades were the first kind of whiskey mixed drink that I got really into. I've always been a fan of them. I've never, knock on wood, I've never like gone overboard and drank so many of them that I don't like them. It's not like that, because when I say my first, I feel like people get that picture in their head. It wasn't like that. It was just I just loved them, especially in the summertime, having a good Lynchburg lemonade. I also can credit my dad for me liking these because he likes Lynchburg lemonades. He introduced me to them when I was of age, of course. And so it was one of the first ones that I've enjoyed. It's another one that's just so good for summertime because it's so light. There's not too much alcohol in it, but please still stay hydrated in between drinks. But there's not too much alcohol in it, so it's a really nice kind of lighter cocktail to have in the summertime. Those are all of them. So I'm going to recap them one more time in case you miss a name and you don't want to like skip back through the podcast. If you're just looking for a list of what to Google, here's what you can Google. So the first one I talked about, Bourbon Orange Crush, and I got that from Malcolm Reed on TikTok. The second one, Bourbon Smash, you can get that all over the internet, but specifically TomMacy.com is where I got the recipe that I talked about in this episode, and you can also add some fruit to that one. A Gold Rush cocktail, I don't have a specific source for this one, but it's another really common one you can find all over the internet. An Old Fashioned, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. It's all over the internet. And then a Lynchburg lemonade, which I recommend getting the recipe straight from Jack Daniels' website because it is a Jack Daniels cocktail that is originally designed by them, at least as far as I know. And before everybody takes to the comments, yes, it is kind of like a weak whiskey sour. It's kind of like you water down a whiskey sour to the point, with 7-Up, to the point that it's less alcoholic. I get that, but it's really, really good. So got to include it on here and got to credit Jack Daniels with that recipe. Okay, that's all we've got for cocktails, but we're going to move on to our Q&A session, the Q&A portion of this evening. These questions come to us from the patrons, so thank you so much to everybody who supports us on the Patreon page. They get to submit questions for me to answer on the show, and we've got a few of them today, so I'm just going to jump right into it. The first one is, I have always wondered if poor man's pappy or poorer man's pappy actually compares to pappy. I am not going to lie to you, I totally forgot to look up the recipe for this. So what I will say, poorer man's pappy. Poorer man's pappy or poor man's pappy is you blend different whiskeys to try to make it taste like Pappy Van Winkle. So poor man's pappy is this is straight from Google AI, which sometimes is super helpful, sometimes it's terrible. Poor man's pappy is a blend of wheated bourbons intended as a more affordable alternative to Pappy Van Winkle. Specifically, you're mixing together Weller 12-year and Weller Antique, or, I've never heard of this one, Maker's Mark cask strength with Larceny. And then it says the most common is a 2-to-3 ratio of Weller 12-year-old and Weller Antique. Well, let me tell you something. This cocktail right here turned out nasty, and I have Weller Antique and Weller 12-year. I'm not going to measure out the 2-to-3 ratio, but we're going to mix them right now and try this right here, right now. Let's do this thing. Okay, so as I'm doing this, a little bit of background here. So Weller is made from the same mash bill as Pappy Van Winkle, and so from the same distillery. And so the thought is, like, by mixing different Wellers together, you can get something that tastes like Pappy Van Winkle. It is the same mash bill. It might even be the same everything except aging. I don't know for sure. If I remember correctly, they do this with some bottles at Buffalo Trace. I don't remember if Pappy is one of them. It comes down to taste. So they age different barrels longer. They taste them to find the best barrels and blend those to make Pappy, I think. I know they do that with different bourbons at Buffalo Trace where it's all the same. It just depends on the barrels and where they come from and how old they are, and most importantly, what they taste like. They have like a tasting panel that helps decide those things. So from what I can find online, it's it's the majority Weller Antique. So I'm going to put, I don't know, let's call that half an ounce in there. And then just a little bit less of Weller 12 year. So I'm going to put just a little less than half an ounce in here. I'm going to try to do this properly. I think that's about perfect. Okay. I'm going to swirl the heck out of it so that it really gets mixed in. Let's just get this disgusting Gold Rush out of here because I ruined it. I did a terrible job, and I accept that. All right. Blend them together super good. I'm going to swirl the absolute crap out of it, and then we're going to take a palate warm-up sip. I'm not going to react off the palate warm-up sip because I haven't had any neat whiskey yet today, and if I just react to that, it's going to be, it's just going to taste like burn at first. Fun fact, you should do that before you taste whiskey most of the time. I mean, I love Weller, so it's super duper tasty. I don't think it tastes like Pappy, but I've also only ever had Old Rip. I've never actually had Pappy. And I also don't remember it the greatest because it was a while ago. It was only one glass of it. Here's what I will say. So I can't really compare to Pappy, but I can make some assumptions about what Pappy tastes like. I think most of the Wellers, some more than others, have a almost acetone flavor to them, a little bit of a harshness. Maybe it's metallic, maybe it's acetone, depends on your palate a little bit. And I think that's still here. Like blending these didn't magically get rid of that. So definitely there's a harshness to this that I would assume isn't in the more expensive Pappies. I know that Old Rip was incredibly, this is so stereotypical to say, but it was incredibly smooth. I know that for sure. It was very approachable on my palate. So I'm going to assume the more expensive ones definitely are very approachable, smooth, don't have a lot of that harshness to them, that acetone type flavor. With that being my assumption, I would say that this doesn't taste quite the level of Pappy. What I will say, well, also, it has an alcohol-y taste to it as well. But what I will say to its credit is that it does taste very complex, very sweet. There's almost like a berry type flavor to it that I don't notice in these separately as much. So it is, it's a complex, sweet, very tasty glass. I'd like to blind it. You might have just made me come up with a video. That's a great point. I'd like to blind it next to these two individually. And so I'll probably actually do that, but not right now, obviously. But I think that'd be a really good blind tasting. But overall, it smells great. It tastes great, but I don't think it's quite the quality that you get from Pappy. I think it's a little bit more harsh if I had to guess. That's like mostly a guess. I could be totally wrong. But also, don't obsess over Pappy too much. Pappy's good, at least from what I've heard. I've only had Old Rip, like I said, but most of that super rare, super allocated stuff is a little bit overrated. Don't worry about it. There's great stuff out there on the shelf, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, soapbox over. Moving on to the next one. What tasting profiles do you get from common cask finishes? So to answer this one, I honestly just came up with some cask finishes off the top of my head that I drink a lot or that I've had a lot of. So I'd say with a wine finish, it's usually going to be sweet. It's going to be fruity. It totally depends on the type of wine, but usually it's a little bit predictable where like a sweeter wine is going to have a sweeter whiskey if you finish the whiskey in that. A drier wine is going to be a drier finish on a whiskey. Sometimes they'll have almost like a nutty flavor to them or like a raisiny flavor to them because some wines have that sort of a flavor to them. So that's what you're going to get from a lot of different wine finishes. Most of the acts, so like cognac, Armagnac, those are going to be sweet, but they're going to have a bitter taste at the end. Armagnac or Armagnac, I know for sure, has had like an appley taste to me before. And then it like gets a little bit dry, almost like the film that sugar leaves on your tongue that's almost a little bit bitter. Kind of like that. Most of the woods, like wood finishes, are going to vary a lot. So like French oak is going to be like a little cinnamon with some cherries and vanilla. That's what I usually get from French oak. Whereas Amburana is going to be straight cinnamon toast crunch. It's cinnamony. It's a little bit of apple sometimes, but like it's strong cinnamon and apple pie type vibe to it. There are other oaks, other woods that you can finish in that you're going to get slightly different things. So for those, like, without just running through all of them, I would recommend trying them or Googling online like the type of flavor that it's going to give you. Because there's a lot that even I haven't had. So that's what you're going to get from different wood finishes. The beer finishes kind of vary. I think the only beer finish that I've had is a stout finish. But I feel like my gut says I'm wrong about that. But the only one I can think of, I've had a couple different stout cask finishes, and they kind of taste like the beer. Like you can get that stout flavor to them. They taste like whiskey with a tiny bit of stout in them, but a little different. No, Jameson IPA. That's exactly what I was trying to think of. So I've had that. I don't even remember what it was like. That was years ago. But yeah, that's what you're kind of in for with beer finishes. And then sweeteners, simply put, are going to taste like whatever the sweetener is. So a maple barrel is going to taste like there's a little bit of maple syrup in your bourbon. A honey barrel is going to taste like there's a little bit of honey in your bourbon. And it's a lot more subtle. It's a lot more mellow than actually mixing those things in. But in general, that's kind of what you can expect. Rum, I forgot about. That's got a nice molassesy sweet flavor to it. Angel's Envy Rye is finished in a rum cask. That's super sweet apricot. There's a few finished in rum. I don't want to go on all day with just finishes, but yeah, those are the type of things that you should expect. And I highly recommend trying them at like a bar first if you're unsure, because they are a little bit unpredictable, right? Like how do I put this? You might like maple syrup and you might like bourbon, but you might not like a bourbon finished in a maple barrel. And also, it comes down to the quality of the blend. Some blenders are just better at it than others. The other thing I'd recommend is trying the thing that it's finished in. So if you don't like stout beer, if you've had them and you hate it, you might not like a stout finish. If you don't like Armagnac or Cognac, you might not like those as finishes. Or you still might, don't get me wrong, but at least you'll know what kinds of flavors to look for. So I highly recommend that as well. There's a ton more out there. We could go on all day, but those are the most common ones, at least that I personally have run into. The last question that we've got is, what farm-to-glass distillers do you consider the best? Now, honestly, I have not had enough specifically farm-to-glass distillers for me to just rattle off a list off the top of my head. But I wrote down some that I enjoy. And if you don't know what farm-to-glass or grain-to-glass means, it basically means it's a distiller that they acquired the grain or they grow the grain themselves, and they either grow the grain themselves or usually they work heavily with like local farmers. They acquire the grain, they distill it, they age it, and then they blend it, and then that's the whiskey that they put out. As opposed to either buying product from somebody else and aging it, buying aged product from somebody else and blending it, buying aged product like an actual done whiskey that's ready to be drank and finishing it in something and then bottling it. Those are all different methods of sourcing, as opposed to just like whatever grain we can get our hands on, that's the barley that we're going to use. That's another way you can do things. Like grain to glass or farm to glass is typically like you're working closely with specific farmers, usually specific to your area, and you're taking those grains and turning them into a whiskey. So let's get to the distillers. Like I said, I haven't had enough to be like, these are the best, but I have had some that stand out above the others. So I think Wyoming whiskey is good, not amazing, but also has a unique flavor. So I also really enjoyed it for that reason. So I really like Wyoming whiskey. Frey Ranch. I had some stuff from Frey Ranch. I think it was their cask strength bourbon. That was phenomenal. And I've had some stuff from Frey Ranch that was just okay. I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's all right. But they make some really, really good stuff. It really just probably depends on palate and preference and things like that. So I recommend trying some stuff from them. Redwood Empire actually has a couple grain to glass whiskeys. Their Grizzly Beast is good. Their Rocket Top, almost couldn't remember that one. Their Rocket Top Rye is really, really good. In my opinion, for my palate, I really enjoy that. Sagamore Spirits is also working on becoming more grain to glass. So if I'm not mistaken, they have some whiskeys out now that are grain to glass and then some that are sourced. And then maybe there's some that's a blend of both, or maybe everything they've got is a blend of both. I don't know for sure. But I know for sure they're working on becoming more and more grain to glass and incorporating more of that. That sort of a thing really takes time because you have to sit on the product and let it age. So I know that they're working on it as well. And what I've had from Sagamore, I've really enjoyed. Those were just the ones that came to mind. Looking at that question and looking through my bottles and looking up some grain to glass distillers, because to be totally honest with you, I forget sometimes. I'm like, who's grain to glass again? Who's sourced again? Sometimes you got to look that stuff up. But those are the ones that came to mind when I was reading into it more, and some of them off the top of my head, some of them from finding it online. And I was like, yeah, no, that is a really good one. So that's the last question that we've got for this episode, though, guys. So I hope that one of these cocktails is good for you. I hope you enjoy it. Please let me know, especially through the Patreon or through the Discord. The Discord's available to everybody. Some of the Discord, not the locked channels that are patron only. But let me know through one of those channels which one you like the most, or if you thought one of them was terrible, something like that. And I think that's all we've got for this episode. I don't want to ramble on any longer. Thank you guys all so much for listening. I will leave you with learn to drink, drink to learn. Hi there. If you're still listening to this, then I'm going to assume that you enjoyed the show. So please consider taking a moment to leave a 5-star rating or review and subscribe on whatever platform it is that you're watching/listening to this on. And as always, please, please, please drink responsibly. Cheers.